Alright, let's talk about Sid Meier's Civilization 7 that is exclusive to MetaQuest 3 and 3S. There's a lot that I want to discuss, but before that, I did receive preview access from 2K Games as part of the MetaQuest Creator Program to create this video. With that out of the way, Civilization 7 inside standalone VR, having played on MetaQuest 3 3S for about a week, is a bit of an odd one because it finally brings the Civ franchise on Quest, but it's plagued by a bit of issues. Honestly, tradition at this point with every new release, whether it's certain design choices, lack of options, visual artifacts, and progression blocking bugs, it's not exactly the most polished launch. And keep in mind that they're asking for $60 on release. The bar needs to be higher for games charging more. With that price tag, some of the notable features included in the VR version are meeting the iconic world leaders of Civ. The top-down view from above adds an interesting perspective, especially during battles or strategizing, a multiplayer mode that allows you to play with up to 3 other Quest 3 3S players, which of course requires a 2K account, a mixed reality mode to play as a tabletop in your own play space, and when engaging in diplomacy, forging alliances, or declaring war, it's all face to face. It is Civilization with a few quirks added to stamp its VR tag. For a Quest port, it's certainly on the pricier end at $60, but the replayability to me is the biggest selling point. In Civ, it always comes down to that one last turn late at night, then boom, the sun is beginning to rise and it's 6 a.m. in the morning. Civilization 7, even if it's completely different from Civ 6 that I personally enjoy more as there's way more player autonomy, is still fun. Compared to other games in the genre with ports brought to Quest, like the disappointment that was Cities VR that was released in 2022 and a pretty lackluster port, but the full content of Tropical, Civilization 7 VR is ambitious, pushing for new heights, but releases like it remind me why exactly VR is still in the current state that it's in. If you're new to Civ, there's a bit of a learning curve. I couldn't explain the gameplay myself quite well yet, but taking over the world with the dawn of a new civilization guided by you never gets old. Civilization 7 revamps the graphical art style, encounters diplomatic action, and divides ages into antiquity, exploration, and modern eras. In VR, there are quite a few aspects that change up the experience. It does include a built-in tutorial, but a large majority of the game is learning stuff firsthand on your account or searching up stuff on your own. Choosing the many different historical leaders, starting with your first settlement, choosing new technologies, choosing certain policies, dealing with natural disasters, discovering the world around you, choosing friend from foe, declaring war on your competition, and eventually overtaking the world is addicting. Compared to Civilization 6, this entry is much easier to get into and the narration is an improvement. You could cooperate with other civilizations, that's kind of what I tend to do normally, but you could also warmonger. I enjoy the early game the most and it varies quite a bit from your last playthrough. You can customize the level of difficulty, speed, and map size before creating a new game. In terms of the good, before talking about the issues and my own personal suggestions, I enjoyed that the developers did implement new interactions and certain engagements like playing in mixed reality are really unique to the medium. The sense of space and scale, even with limiting players to a circular virtual tabletop, adds a deeper sense of immersion. Having the guy on the American $100 bill confront you declaring war in front of your face is so random but amusing. Commanding your troops into battle and growing your civilization in full 6 degrees of freedom is such a trip. Games or experiences that make use of a mixed reality mode or an entire experience surrounding it, I usually find it quite gimmicky and forgettable. Having played several hours in mixed reality of Civilization 7 VR, I better understand the appeal. VR tabletop games have so much potential, and once Quest headsets adapt a technology like eye tracking all around, it will take this genre of VR games to new heights. As with hand tracking, to play in mixed reality, you do need to set up your play space boundary. Mixed reality mode isn't perfect as it's missing some features like in its VR version of allowing users to tilt the tabletop to their preference, as looking straight down at a decline for hours with a VR headset on your face gets tiring after a while. And scenarios encountering rivals in virtual reality or mixed reality does throw off the layout, making you arrange the tabletop constantly, or it does kind of get old after a while while, especially if you continue playing for hours on end. This port on Civ 7 on Quest is published by 2K Games and developed by PlaySide Studios, an Australian developer that recently released games on Quest like Shattered and Dumb Ways Free For All. Their experience shows, but it does leave the impression that more could have been done. Like Batman Arkham Shadow at first impressions, booting up the game for the first time is kinda surreal that the franchise is on Quest. I'm not big on exclusives and I would love to see this game come to other platforms like PCVR, but Civilization 7 VR on Quest in the current state is in need of a few updates. All of the footage is captured on the preview access build and I've encountered issues ranging from graphics where every 2D panel or transparent object disappears, leading me to completely restarting my game, progression issues in which say a narrative or trait pops up require me to make a decision, and on my left hand my input no longer works, which in order to fix I do have to leave and load in the game every time it happens, and this occurs every few turns on certain saves. Performance is give or take. It does use application space warp. There's automatic issues already associated with it as with rip rejection, and if I'm recording it tends to stutter non-stop, but I played for a dozen or so hours without recording to test this and the experience inside the headset is pretty smooth 90% of the time. There's oddities in which starting the app on either Quest 3, 3S, whether on V76 or V74 is degraded, but restarting the headset fixes it momentarily. Generally, the longer you play on apps using application space warp, performance will bork itself over time. I did abruptly experience a few crashes with and without recording. It didn't tell me if it was memory related. There's a lot of pop-in, resolution drops, and zooming out does reduce graphical fidelity at the cost of viewing a much large portion of the map. Now let's discuss controls. Upon starting the game, it does feature a tutorial for the VR version. I heavily emphasize taking it as it explains movement and teleport options. A majority of the gameplay will be spent holding up your controller with your offhand and selecting with your main hand to upgrade and grow your city. You'll navigate with your thumbstick to select actions. It's simple and you can even tilt the tabletop with your thumbstick to be at ground level or at an incline. You can view all of your stats, turning over your wrist to see a 2D map and keep track of time and turns. Now in terms of standalone graphics, yes, Civilization 7 on Quest 3 3S uses application space warp and is already rendered at a really high resolution, scaling to 150% of Quest 3 3S's default eye buffer resolution. However, in menu screens, selection menus where you choose your civilization, loading screens, and pausing the game that isn't actually playing the game itself, it runs at a native frame rate at 72 Hz. That is until you start the game when application space warp kicks in, and I have to repeat this again, it's not a synchronous space warp, that's PC only. I still see quite a bit of people and publications get this mixed up. While playing and recording with MetaQuest Developer Hub in cinematic mode, the experience is much more sporadic and inconsistent. However, I can vouch that the game runs smoothly 90 to 95% of the time while not recording. During the start of the Antiquity Age into the Exploration Age and the Modern Age, performance suffers a bit as expected, having more things on screen and turns with other civilizations, but it's still very playable. An issue that I do have is that since resolution is scaled pretty high, it tends to fluctuate a ton. If you're in virtual reality or mixed reality, as mentioned, it scales to 150% at most, but it scales all the way down below 75%, which makes things incredibly blurry, and making out what's directly in front of you becomes an issue. There's also a ton of texture pop in, low level of detail, visual inconsistencies, zooming out makes assets into blobs, and zooming in all the way reveals more detail, but at the cost of what you see. Having Civilization 7 in VR, I will say certain things I overlook because I do enjoy the game, but it does have its issues. Now, is Sid Meier's Civilization 7 VR on Quest 3 3S worth it? Well, it depends. At $60, this title, even for a VR port, is a bit pricey. It's not Nintendo pricey. MetaQuest Plus subscribers should have a monthly 30% off coupon in which you can use, or with my 10% off link down below. For me, if you're a fan of of Civilization 6 or 7, I say give it a try, but it isn't without its issues. You aren't necessarily getting the best version of Civilization 7, but the benefit of conveniently playing on your MetaQuest headset. Strategizing and keeping a tab of everything isn't the best. Certain modes like mixed reality improve immersion, but I wouldn't bank an entire game on it quite yet apart from casual playthroughs. With the usual associated issues with application space warp and resolution inconsistencies, it's tough to ignore. I'm 100% all for these type of ports, but I really do hope 2K Games keeps supporting it further, even if that means add-on content. This statement is pretty much true with ports or developers quote-unquote bringing AAA VR experiences to Quest. Civilization 7 VR is good fun, and I would love to see this game over on PCVR. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. If you tried Civ 7 or have any questions, let me know down below in the comment section. Leave a like or dislike, subscribe for similar VR content, and rambling from me until the next video. See ya.